Welcome to the Missing Ingredient Podcast with CJ Bruce, where food and beverage founders, operators, and experts share the real strategies behind building successful brands. Let's jump into today's show.
Hey, I'm CJ Bruce, and welcome to the show. This is the podcast for founders and leaders of high-impact food and beverage brands who are serious about scaling. Each episode, I sit down with the people who power the food and beverage industry, brand operators, agencies, vendors, creators, and retailers, to uncomplicate the strategies that take brands from early traction to serious scale. This episode is sponsored by The Missing Ingredient, a food and beverage marketing agency with over a decade in the industry. We take a different approach, starting with your business goals, looking at the full picture, and building a marketing strategy that actually ties back to growth. From content and performance marketing to influencer partnerships and AI-powered workflows, we're an extension of your team, not just another vendor. Learn more at themissingingredient.com. Now, before I introduce today's guests, I'm going to give a big thank you to Mike Bosworth from True Origin Foods, who introduced us, and we'll definitely get into True Origin today. You can check them out at trueoriginfoods.com. Now, for today's guest, Nicole Rogers has spent 25 years building standout brands across food, beverage, lifestyle, and the arts, with a career spanning agency work, regional brand building, and a long in-house tenure at Chipotle Mexican Grill. As the founder of GriffJack and a partner in True Origin Foods, she brings campaign strategy, creative direction, and clarity to brands at moments of growth and reinvention. She sees the whole picture, holds the line on quality, and brings the right people together. Welcome to the show, Nicole.
Hi, thanks. I'm happy to see you.
Yeah, happy to see you too. We were joking before. I did some research before we hopped on, so I'm going to dive right into it. You were, in the past, you've been called Hurricane Nicole for the energy that you bring, but you've also talked about how you're more peaceful or quiet in your home life. So you talk a little bit about that energy and how you balance those two.
Sure. Yeah, it just makes me giggle to hear that because, like I said, I feel like these days I'm more of just like a real gusty wind. But the Hurricane Nicole, I think, really came about since I was a small person, since I was a little kid. My folks would make jokes about how like I could sell anything. I could get anybody excited about anything. If you had a raffle and you needed to sell tickets, if you were a Girl Scout and you needed to sell cookies, like I was your gal. And it really is that I tend to, you don't have to wonder what I'm thinking. I tend to be pretty emotive. And I have this energy around things that I get really excited about. And if I'm not excited about it, I can't fake it. It's not something I'm going to like put on. And so when I'm really enthused about a brand, about a story, about an experience, I do want to share it. I get asked sometimes like, how did I create this path in my career? And I was like, well, I really just was a good eater and talked about it. And so that's kind of how the Hurricane started, is just I'm emotive and I often say what I think, and it generally is excitable and excited, and people tend to respond to that. And so how that marries against my actual real life is I know exactly the life I created for myself. I am an introvert who wears extrovert clothes. I know I did this to myself, but my time is my alone time, my time that is just Nicole's is much quieter. It's much more in solitude. I have a really peaceful home and I have a really peaceful place where I live. And so if I get to pick and choose how I spend my time, it's on my own. It's doing things like being outdoors. I'm hiking, I'm reading, I'm studying. I am a pretty hungry learner. And so I spend a lot of time in study. And so yeah, the way it balances out is at least when I'm excited about something, it's real. and that there's some validity to my excitement as opposed to, being some kind of put on.
Yeah, that's great. So shifting to your, more of your professional career, you've worn a lot of hats across food and beverage, PR, restaurant marketing, tourism, premium grocery, agency. So when somebody just asks you, what is it that you do, how do you answer that question?
Now, really, it is, like I said, I eat really well and I talk about it, but it kind of depends on kind of who I'm talking with. If they have some sort of context for what strategy and brand building actually means, then usually they understand that part of it, is that it's not just this one linear or this one tactical checkbox and therefore you've done marketing or therefore you've done branding. And so the conversations can usually grow from there if they have an understanding. If they have no context for what marketing is. They're really consumers who just think it's just by accident they find new things, and just by accident they try new brands. Just by accident things land in their cupboards. That's usually when I share that, like, it's my job to help tell stories to help them connect with why they're buying something or not. So yeah, what I do is I tell stories. I work with brands, and tell stories is so superficial. Like, honestly, like, my real purpose in what it is that I do is I want to spark connection that brings perspective so that others are doing more and being greater together than they could on their own. And so if that is telling a story and bringing certain brands together to tell a larger one, if that is creating campaigns that helps bring a product to market in a different way, if that is just helping a brand have a better visual story and bring a rebrand to market, then it really spans in a lot of different ways. I used to joke that if you could eat it, drink it, use it, play it, touch it, I probably had my hands on it.
Nice. Well, let's get into some of these tactics and your approach that you've taken over the years. So I think going way back when you were working at winecountry.com.
Oh my gosh.
I know. We're going way back. We're starting way back. You talk about research, so market research, but I'm going to bring it to the present. Don't worry. We're not. I'm not
No. This is amazing.
So, one of the things, and yeah, like I said, did some homework, but you talked about, why people buy food, which is just what you're just getting into. Like, why do they actually buy it versus just how to sell it?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious, even going back to that, you could take this, through your career, however you'd like. What did you learn about consumer motivation that maybe still applies today, or how has that evolved, over your career?
I mean, you're really pulling like a hot ones on me. This is great. And that's a great question. And that was such a formative time. So winecountry.com, which doesn't exist, I don't think anymore, or if it has, it's changed hands a million times. But it was at the beginning part of the internet. And I had joined right out of college. And so I'm leaving college with all of these big ideas of what PR, what I would be doing in public relations, and seeing all of my friends who graduated ahead of me have these really fancy gigs, especially in tech. I was like, I am on that same road. And the first tech bubble burst right about the time I graduated. So I moved to California 10 days after, and the job interviews, and I had an offer, it all was rescinded, all in a hot second, all in tech. And then I meet the folks over at winecountry.com, which then was run by a company called Free Run Technologies. And they really took a gamble on a 22-year-old, 21-year-old, and was like, you need to write. Like, we want this media support, but we also need a writer. And so that is where I started to find my sea legs in telling stories. I mean, God bless them for trusting a 22-year-old to talk about wine. So yeah, they trusted a 22-year-old who thought, Killian's Red was like premium. And I mean, it's not, it's great. Everyone should drink it. But I did not have a palate. I did not have a vocabulary. And so I had to do a lot of real fast learning. And that also happened at the same time as I started that job 3 months before 9/11. And being in a tourist destination and having to create conversation and story around the wine country experience, not only was I learning a whole new language and learning a whole new way of research and understanding about what this food and beverage experience is, but I'm having to do that in a time where our country hadn't experienced that kind of fear in at least our generation. And so having that impact the logistics of travel and tourism, never mind consumer trust and behaviors, we had to completely change tact. And so this was a department of me, and I reported into a sales director. So whatever idea I had, it was like, okay, let's see if this works. And so I would say that was probably one of the earliest pieces around understanding consumer behaviors and figuring out how to tell stories in a different way that will help gain their trust, that will help speak to them exactly where they are. I didn't have words or language for that when I was 22 or whatever, but that's exactly what had to happen. We had to change how we talked about inviting people to wine country. We had to change the way we talked about the travel experience into wine country. And so I think that that really informed so much of the rest of my career. So yes, I moved into other PR agencies, mostly in consumer, mostly in food and bev. And it was at really tricky times. I remember having to moved on from winecountry.com and was in a small boutique agency that was headquartered in the UK. I was like the only American working for them. And they had a small office that was here in Marin County. And we were launching a video game, a first player shooter video game, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, like one of the iterations. And we had this massive media event that we planned at the Presidio because that's part of where the game was set. And it was the day George W. Bush, I'm sorry, I should be more respectful, declared war. And so it was remarkable, like what that meant for us to support the brand, support the client, communicate with the media, and be hosting a game that was very war-centric at a time that the president just declared. And so it really forced me to be a good observer. It forced me to listen closely, listen to the journalists, listen to the client, listen to my leaders within the agency, and make sure that I think that was probably the time in my life where I think some of what is best served to brands is to have a team that's anticipatory. And I'm not saying like you need to be this, magic 8-ball and be able to, tell what's going to happen in the future. But I mean, the sense of that was one of the earliest times of learning how to ask questions, be smarter about my research, be smarter about listening. Because there are things that aren't necessarily going to be told directly to you of like, here, go do these 7 things and everything will be fine. And so it was really set the stage for the rest of my career of paying attention, listening to consumers, listening to the client, figuring out where those two can actually intersect in some sort of real way. And hopefully you'll be able to weather whatever storm that you're in. But yeah, that was the earliest times and some of the hardest lessons. I won't lie. I was just a young little baby possum who had no idea what I was doing. But I had enough good leaders around me who kind of pulled me under and was like, okay, you have no idea what you're doing. So I'm going to help you figure this out a little bit. And a lot of it was just knowing to ask questions and listen.
Yeah, that's great. And timeless lessons to learn there.
Brutal is what it is. So brutal.
Brutal. You go through those types of times and you make it the other side, and there's a lot that you learn that you never forget.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You have, these mentors that can help you along. It's really,
absolutely.
That's great. So I want to skip ahead to Chipotle. And so you talked about Chipotle being, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this research, but I'm going to throw it all
you're
out there.
solid. I'm here for it.
So the heart and soul of why you care about food. So this is where you get to spend time on farms, learning about, the cilantro dairy. So I'm curious, like when you were in that, was there something, because you said you've been in food and beverage for a while, was there something that really like solidified that connection or like changed that connection for you when you got to be closer to where the product was sourced?
Yeah, I think it was going in-house. So I had worked for another small PR agency that was then based out of Seattle. And we covered, at the time, media relations for the Northwest for Chipotle. And they just so happened to have had an opportunity for an in-house marketing person that covered the region that I was living in. And they asked if I was interested in making a changeover. They felt that I had some transferable skills. And, it ended up being one of the best decisions I ever made, to be totally honest. I think going in-house, and it's like, I'm not telling someone else's story per se. It was where I will say, like, I was in some of the most golden years at Chipotle. I joined shortly after they went public. They were incredible. They were so brave, and they were relentless in what it is they wanted to do in the way of their values on fast casual food, their values in agriculture. They were so strong in their convictions. And so the team that I got to work with, I joked that we were all like swimming in the adobo. Like we were all in. And so it felt in a lot of ways like I was telling my own story, which is very different than when you're an agency hired to tell the story for someone else. And I think that is really what shifted how I think about marketing and branding forever and working with other brands now today, is that I can really easily and really quickly, I will joke with clients where I'm like, well, I'll put on your branded vest and you can pretend that I'm in-house for you. And because that's how a lot of times how it feels. It's not just like, oh, I have this client who does this thing and it's detached from me. And so really that time with Chipotle, we had such freedom and such autonomy to develop marketing plans that were really specific to our markets. So I had about 118 restaurants that were in my like territory of support. And it's still not a franchise. So these are all corporate owned. These are all designed to feel like its own unique neighborhood Chipotle. And so having to develop dedicated marketing plans, understanding everything from traffic patterns to potential drivers to ways to be involved in the community, ways to share in some of the community responsibility with multiple restaurants. It really felt like this was one of my own. And so it gave us a lot of autonomy. They gave us a lot of trust. And I think that had shifted in some big ways. So that meant that the unique thing in the market that I was serving was that we were so close to the growers and providers. So being able to put together media tours and be on the other side of the table. So I'm not the agency person working with the media, bringing it in for a client, but rather I am the client, I am the brand, and I'm bringing in all of this media to come in and tour different farms and meet the growers and hear the story and get a sense of what Chipotle really was. At the time, people had a lot of misunderstanding that they thought it was owned by McDonald's. And so being able to clear up like how that came to be and why and what this reality was just awesome. So yeah, being able to work with the farmers and growers and tell that story, that really changed everything for me, to be honest. Being in-house, understanding how to intimately tell a story that makes you feel like it's yours, and being able to do that in a space that just is really natural. Always been in food and bev, always been related to agriculture. I grew up a mile from Idaho on the Washington side. And it just, the agriculture just is. And so being able to have those relationships and do it in a way that you get to feel really proud of, like you get to show it off. That felt awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. I'm curious, going from, thinking about Chipotle, and there's like the face-to-face, people serving people food, the direct, experience of having the food and being, in the restaurant and having that environment. Curious if there's, how do you think about that with, brands that's e-commerce or D2C, or they never have that direct connection with people that are consuming the products? And how does that connect? Like thinking about that act of like service or, the connection. Is there any connections you draw with those two?
I think they are very different. It's not impossible, like to create being a D2C or a brand that is like purely e-com. Like I think that it still is requiring you to do the fundamental, which is have some sort of emotional connection with the consumer. And I think we've talked about this before, that when it comes to food in particular, I have pretty strong feelings that people tend to purchase food based on taste first. And then the next two factors are always duking it out, which is price and convenience. And so that was one of the things we learned, it was a real sobering thing, but at the time it was something that was so like, you could feel so righteous in your beliefs. With Chipotle, and at the time, their phrase for their commitment for purchasing was food with integrity. And they would do, really elaborate and detailed surveys of guests that would be coming in and wanting to understand what was driving them, what were they looking for. And almost always it was, this is delicious and I can get so much for, at the time, it was like $6. This is many years ago now. So it was still always taste then price. And so I think, and like, and the value they felt they were getting for that price. And so I think with Chipotle, they used to say, like, that's what food with integrity is that we'll always care more about your food than you do. And they were totally okay, at the time, with this notion that doing the right thing by the farmers and growers, doing the right thing by their staff, doing the right thing by the guest, and offering this, what they felt was the best quality of fill in the blank, was the right thing to do. And it was okay if the guest still felt as though like, well, it's just delicious, right? And it's get a ton of food and it's $6. This is great, right? Chipotle was fine with that. And at that time, I speak zero on behalf of the brand, I know nothing now. It's been many, many, many years since I've been part of that, but like over a decade. But those were some of the things that I think really helped shape how I think about guiding other brands now. It's that understanding what that value is and how are you going to create that connection. So yes, I think anytime how you find that connection or how you create that is very different. We are far less. I think maybe this pendulum might be shifting back to what this kind of like analog culture could be. But I think that for most brands, that first like experience or trial is still always going to be king, and creating some sort of connection, some way that the consumer can identify that, yes, this is just exactly what I want, or they are just like me, or this is solving the problem, or this is the most delicious thing I've ever had, is still having to create that connection with the human. Is just being done really differently. It's not in line with Chipotle, where you're having at the time, the commitment that they had to training their teams on how to interact with people in the public was really special. And that was part of why people wanted to try it in the first place.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, I think a theme that's occurring. We've had the conversation, like you said, and theme on the podcast, and taste, leading with taste. Taste is everything. Even if you have this amazing story, even if whatever that story is, it could be the founder story, it could be the sourcing story, it could be sustainability. No, that's all, footnotes. So
I mean, I don't mean to be flip about it, but like it's true in so many ways. Like nobody's walking down the grocery aisle and is like, you know what I'm so hungry for? Some sustainability.
Yeah.
Nobody is like, oh my God, I am just ready to eat my own hand. What I need is recycled packaging immediately. These cookies taste like it comes from a great guy. Am I right? Never going to happen. So it's always about taste first, and then deciding as a brand where you are in your own convictions and how comfortable you are with staying true to who you are, and you don't care whether or not it influences somebody else. It's about how you, the brand, are presenting yourself to the world.
Yeah, that's good. I want to just take a turn for a second, because pick up on the analog piece you mentioned, because it's something that we've been talking about too. I'm just curious if you could expand on that a little more, like seeing this pendulum swing more analog with everything being, digital everywhere. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think it's more than even just like digital everywhere, and folks are looking for, a softer life, or they're looking for things that they can be making or building with their hands. There was even, I think it was in the San Francisco Standard this morning, was how they are seeing this major upswing of young people who work in AI attending church. Like, church is super analog. So it's an interesting cultural shift, I think. I don't know. I don't think it's ever going to be this like extreme either or, but I do think there is this shift in consumer desire for things that feel real. There's this hunger and this like attraction to what this kind of digital or agentic life can look like and feel like. And I think that desire to see things in their lives become easier. And at the same time, it comes with all of the messy slop as well. And so there becomes distrust of what are their eyes actually seeing? What story are they actually reading? Is what they're being sold even remotely true? And so that then I think leads back to a little bit of this, how do we connect with actual humans in real life? My husband's a fine artist. He is an oil painter, and he and I talk about this a lot. He had a previous 25-year career in tech, and there's such amazing interest and desire for original oil paintings. And I think some of it is that because it can't be replicated truly. And so there's a different soul that exists in that. So I think like in that swing and how that relates to like our work within food and beverage is that, yes, I still think that fundamentally taste is going to be the thing that will drive folks. I think that connecting as real humans will still fundamentally, drive people. It just may be a different way of how they are feeling that connection. But I do think there's that shift that's happening. Like there's a desire for authenticity that I think that is lacking right now.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think we're definitely seeing that in like multiple ways. I think like on the influencer side is one example, where just like more looking for more in real life, where it's like showing up at something or having that experience or that connection. Obviously with food and beverage, to taste, you've got to try it. You have to be really there to try it and have it. And I think a lot about just with social in general and the flood of slop. But even as that gets better and it's harder to tell what's AI, then I think you get this loss of trust, which then I think, like you're saying, leads more people to be have the face-to-face experience, both personally and professionally.
I think so for sure, especially like even as you're just saying, like in influencer marketing, I think there is such this layer of distrust of the trends of influencers all tasting in the space of food, all tasting things the same way, all overly emotive about something in the same way, that if they're all excited about everything, then they're not actually excited about anything. And so it's just all very formulaic. And I think that consumers see it and feel it, and it can go from everything from like an eye roll to complete rejection.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Detour accomplished. So I want to touch. Yes, it was great. Touch base on this, the farm to fork work.
Okay.
So building this, so Sacramento now known as the farm to fork. So a couple things here. I think just talk a little bit about building. It was a concept, right, and then turning it into like the actual framing of the city. So can you just talk through like a little bit about that process, and I think in the context of coming up with how does it come to life, and maybe also touch on some of the the pushback in there of like it was had a different name and people some criticism around it, which I think can connect to brands and the you're making brand decisions and you're not going to make everybody happy, and some learnings that came from that.
Yeah, that was gosh, that's so wild. So let's see here. I was with Chipotle, and I attended a press conference that then Sacramento Mayor Johnson held in 2012, where they made the official proclamation that Sacramento was America's farm to fork capital. And I was invited to a lunch afterwards with Mary Kimball, who is the executive director of the Center for Land-Based Learning. And I'm sitting at this table of like unbelievably powerful and influential people in ag. Karen Ross, California Secretary of Ag, and other folks that work in economic development. And I somehow was like, yeah, come join us. So I did. And that was probably where it really resonated with me, where I was like, oh, this is going to be a thing. Like I would make the joke living in Sacramento when I joined a leadership program in 2010. And one of the questions on the application was, what do you think is Sacramento's biggest opportunity or biggest struggle? And I had said low self-esteem. And that I felt like Sacramento apologized all the time for being what it wasn't. Like, that apologized that it was only 2 hours from everything else. And instead of feeling really great about being what it is. And so this identity around America's farm to fork capital gave language to something people had known for generations. People dismissed and took for granted for generations. So having language for that was something really exciting. So they held their first festival maybe a year later, and Chipotle was one of the sponsors. And, we had an amazing turnout. I joked that I sold a whole lot of tacos. And then I later on was asked if I would consider applying for this director position and helping build this regional brand. So I joined their team in 2014, I think it was, and 13, 14, something like that. So it was brand new concept, really. And so, yes, everybody had very strong opinions about what qualified as farm to fork. Is it as the crow flies? Is it 150 miles on Google Maps? Is it only organic? Is it only small farmers? Does commercial farming, does production farming count? Does ranching count? Specialty crops only? So it was nonstop. We joked in the early months that I spent like 3 months on a listening tour. And so I traveled to 6 counties and spoke with all kinds of folks and listened, spent so much time listening and asking questions and trying to serve all of the entities that I was responsible to. And it was an amazing experience to be able to help others have that same language, that they could feel some pride in that region is America's farm to fork capital. And so it was really tricky, though. There's absolutely, folks that were like, why do we need to rename ourselves? Aren't we the city of trees? Why do we have to change? And it's not that they had to change. They didn't have to do anything. It just was. That region was folks were drawn to that region originally looking for gold. They just didn't realize that it was in the soil under their feet for a little while. And so the agriculture that exists out in that region is absolutely incredible. And how it feeds so much of the country and the world is absolutely incredible. And we get to take that for granted. And we get to fly into SMF and be like, oh yeah, look at all these farmlands. And you're like, no. Like, look at all of the people that get to be fed. So it's super special when we're able to help turn around some of the naysayers, and it becomes less about having these very rigid lines of you can only be considered this if you are whatever, mileage, percentage on your menu, type of organic or not, size, whatever. It became a really exciting thing to create a very open door to give people ways to define it for themselves, ways for them to find their own identity in the space, ways for them to take pride, whether it's somebody who's not in food at all, but they have visitors coming into Sacramento, and they're really proud to have this massive itinerary of like all the coffee and the beer and the restaurants and the specialty food and like culturally interesting food that they can take all of their guests to. Sacramento is really rich. I don't live in the area now, and it's one of the things I am really proud of, being able to have folks that might be traveling into Sacramento for business, and I'll get a text from friends that's being like, hey, where do I eat? And I was like, how much time do you have? And so I feel really proud being able to show that like Sacramento has this beautiful food scene that I think was just undervalued for a really long time. And now it's in a completely different place, and how it's being talked about and the pride people have and the way that that region is now so attractive for innovation around food and ag and new business around food and ag. I think it's awesome. I think that when folks want to dismiss like business growth in California, they sometimes kind of forget to think about the role of ag tech and the role of food. But yeah, the resistance that we had definitely helped me gain a lot thicker skin. I went from a brand like Chipotle where I had to like not wear Chipotle gear on airplanes because people would be like, oh my God, my son loves barbacoa. Or, having somebody want to ask me every question ever about Chipotle, to joining a brand and creating a brand that didn't exist before me, really. And it had a festival a time. And so having to create a brand and create a purpose and to have a lot of strong opinions, having to coalesce a community like that was really, it was wonderful and absolutely the hardest thing. Having committees of leaders in all factors of food and ag, having committees that were driven around educating our young people on food and ag, having committees that were just our restaurant leaders. Yeah, it was herding cats, my friend. But it was wonderful in terms of like, it helped me think through what is it that we actually believe in? What do we actually care about? Can we hold to that? And can we hold to that while keeping this door very open for others to be able to create their identity or create their definition of that identity for themselves? And it's a tricky thing to do. I can't control how someone else will feel about the brand or how they will describe it or identify with it or not. But what I can do is try and hold our integrity very precious and still allow that door to be open for others to say, yeah, I want to stand next to that.
It's really interesting. Yep. Well, makes me think a couple of them. Well, one, nice job. I moved to Sacramento 5 years ago, and one of the things was seeing it as Farm to Fork Capital, and that piqued my interest for sure as a person who's very interested in food and beverage.
Oh, I love hearing that. Be sure to tell everyone at economic development.
I will. And then I think I see, that's in any situation, marketing situation, like there's so many different stakeholders, and figuring out how to navigate the stakeholders and what to take from each of those to then kind of come to that core piece that not everybody's going to agree with, but gives you the platform to like tell the story and then like you were saying, keep it open so that other people can make it their own and it can grow and live on organically is, really interesting.
One of the things that you had mentioned around like those early parts of my career, what were the threads that may have like continued on into other parts? And like I said, the ability to listen, ask questions, and try and find that overlap between that story and what the consumer actually wants or needs. But also, I think the piece that made Farm to Fork feel successful for me is I had a great coach. And so I've almost always invested in a executive coach. I started working with someone early aughts when I was really hungry to be growing. And then it had shifted into how do I be a better leader? How do I be a better manager? How do I be a better facilitator? And having coaches like at different times throughout my career has been tremendous. And this is I make a pretty clear distinction is this is not a life coach. This is truly an executive coach who understood the nuances of my professional space and where I wanted to be growing, and also really held me accountable. And so having a coach early in, I think really has made, I mean, I still work with coaches today, and I think that is what's helped the successes. I'm curious, I ask questions, I try and connect the dots, and I have people way smarter than me there to support me.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I love that. I want to get shift into kind of more today, a little bit of a bridge with, looking at Nugget. You worked at Nugget Markets, marketing director, and Nugget is a kind of it's called like a premium retailer, grocery retailer in Northern California. And then you're at True Origin, right? You're selling into retail. I'm curious your perspective on, the retail side, and then also brands selling into retail. And, any nuggets that you've learned from there, just nuggets from Nugget.
There's like no pun intended.
Brands, yeah, exactly. Helping brands get into retail, or, challenges, or how brands maybe think about that in the wrong way.
Well, I love all the old stuff. This is the stuff I'm most excited about.
We got there.
So yes, my time at Nugget, while fairly brief, was about 4 years. I left right at COVID. I had to leave in 2020. My husband was going through some pretty significant health changes, and so needed to prioritize our family. And so I left Chipotle. I left Nugget. And at that same time, I'd been good friends with Mike Bosworth of True Origin Foods for, I don't know, maybe close to 10 years at that point. And I don't know, 8, 10 years. And he had been looking to take what he was already doing for 15 plus years of selling into wholesale and restaurants. He wanted to move that into retail. We were seeing like that through COVID, the retail shelves were really empty. And he's like, I don't have a supply chain problem. He's like, what I need is a 2-pound bag to be able to put it on a retail shelf. And so he and Andrew Brutlog, his other partner, they were incredibly generous and invited me to be part of the conversation. And so I got to come in as a small partner and help create an identity and a story for the brand, and then think through how we go through the necessary like logistic steps of getting into retail, but also how we are really creating a beautiful offering for retail. So when you're saying kind of what is my perspective from my time at Nugget to working now with a brand wanting to get into Nugget, which you can find us there, thank you, is I think what I learned is a premium grocer like Nugget Markets, they really do walk the walk in terms of how invested they are in the story of their products. So bringing something in, they really do prioritize quality. They really do prioritize story. They really do prioritize local. And so because of that, we were able to like feel really comfortable in those kinds of conversations. For the way that I think it has helped me with other retailers is I get to hopefully present the brand in a way that is ticking the boxes that are non-negotiables on logistics, right? In terms of distributor, in terms of their price to play, whether it's the promotions that are quarterly, whether it is free fills, whatever. And so understanding like those things, that happens for every brand anywhere. And we can be able to take those, working with our brokers, retailer by retailer, however it's done. But we also get to give those retailers a really tidy package around how to sell the product in a way that's really interesting, whether it is how it can be merchandised, which is the thing that I'm very excited about, to like where it is on shelf, to how it complements that 4-foot set, as opposed to we can't wait to be on shelf and we're going to decimate everything else. Grocers don't care that way. Grocers need their entire set to perform well. And so if you're bringing in a product in that particular category, they need that category as a whole to do well. Of course, they want you to do great. But your measurement as a brand is going to be great, or is going to be different than their measurement of great. And so knowing how to be able to present to a particular retailer things that I think would be useful for them in terms of how it benefits the set, how they can merchandise it, how it could go on sale, how it could go on ad, what other items could complement the ad, like being able to partner up with complementary items, I think is also a really smart thing to do. And that was one of the things that I really learned within Nugget, is that they are so deliberate about who they're bringing in, and they are so specific about how they communicate their stories, how they share it on the ad, how they share it in their newsletters, how they share it in social. And so being able to figure out what those mediums of communication are for any particular retailer, knowing that you're going to have your checklist of non-negotiables, like you're going to have your financials meet theirs. And, whatever price is coming in, like I said, or whatever free fill or quarterly promotion, those things are just usually set. The rest of it is really what can help set you apart. And that is making their job a whole lot easier. Here's short story. They don't need 12 paragraphs. They need like 3 lines. Here is how this could look on shelf. Here is how this could be merchandised quarterly or if you're running this kind of promotion for Father's Day, or you're doing this for Lunar New Year, or you're doing this for the holiday season, like being able to have things that are relevant and not kitschy, but relevant for that retailer, making their job easier is going to go a long way. You have to remember that you're serving them, not just serving your own brand.
Yeah, those are, a lot of great takeaways in that for sure. Grant's thinking about selling into retail and how they do that in the best way. I'm curious, kind of shifting to keeping with True Origin, but thinking about consumer marketing. Mm-hmm. And so True Origin, for those who don't know, right, it's mostly what people think of as commodity products, right? So rice, beans, popcorn. So how do you build that premiumness and like the storytelling aspect in a commodity category like that?
I think it still goes back to trial and taste. And so some of it is helping give language to not all rice is created equal. So not all rice on the shelf is the same. And when someone is willing to try, because we have also done the rest of that formula with that retailer around the right price and the right set, the right set of SKUs on that 4-foot set. Maybe it is on promotion, so it's making trial that much easier. But I do think that the story does resonate. Of course, they're packaging the copy that's on your packaging or the copy that's on your site or in your social. Of course, it's going to have some relevance, but most folks that are walking down a grocery aisle, they're not stopping reading. No one's like, again, oh my gosh, I just really wish I had something good to read. Let's go down the rice aisle. Not going to happen. So it's making sure that you are hitting whatever it is, whether, like I said, it's price, variety, how attractive the actual packaging is, something that's actually going to catch somebody's attention. That will, I think, really improve the potential for trial. But it's when someone tries it that they are like, oh, when I open this bag, the aromatics of this jasmine, or if they are making, basmati for the first time, our basmati for the first time, and realizing just how beautifully fragrant it is, how beautiful it elongates, how it isn't like the others they may have tried. I think that's really how you can start to separate yourself and realize that, yes, this is a commodity category, and you are winning people over by how good it tastes. And then when they ask more questions, they get to feel real validated, where they're like, oh, this is a 5th generation farmer. Oh, they're growing the only basmati that properly elongates in the US. Oh, this is grown 25 minutes from where I live. Or, oh, this is not shipped on a barge. This is not sitting somewhere for 6 or 9 months before it reaches a bag. So then they get to start asking questions, right? But really it comes down to you've hit whatever particular driver it is that makes someone want to buy a thing. And when they try it, they realize. It's hard to tell somebody, oh my gosh, you need to trust me, but my sushi rice, way better. My Calrose, so good. Yeah, it actually is. But no one's going to believe that. You have to actually try it. I would say that's one of the things that have been awesome when we have had some samples at food shows, is how just the smell of the rice cooking brings people over because it is just so aromatic. It's so fresh. It's so beautiful. But folks don't necessarily think that when they're thinking about like, they just buy rice because it's white rice or brown rice, right? That's all there is.
I want to talk about GriffJack also. So you read you describing GriffJack as a general contractor rather than an agency. So senior marketing brain, who then directs specialists. And so can you talk a little bit about the structure and then also how you work with founders and brands?
Yeah. So GriffJack and True Origin Foods really started right about the same time. I just have these kind of like two prongs to my life. And so GriffJack started a little by accident, and that when I had left Nugget Markets, I wasn't quite sure what I would do. I just needed to prioritize my family's health. And I had, let's be real, food people are the best people. And so I had some friends and colleagues who were working on some other things at times, and they'd be like, hey, will you read this? Or, hey, would you proof this? Or what do you think of this concept? And I was like, is this consulting? And then I decided it was. So I went through the process. I said it out loud to a friend who was like, okay, time to put on your big girl pants. And she was like, here's how you register your business. Here's how you're going to have this accountant, get this insurance broker, get this business affairs attorney, have this financial advisor. She's like, get your stuff dialed and Godspeed. And so having somebody like out of the gates really coach me on the business affairs side made setting up GriffJack really easy. So GriffJack is a marketing consultancy, or I don't run as a traditional agency. I think of it a little bit like the Hollywood model. So depending on what a client is needing, whether it is a campaign that is like specific for product launch, or it is a brand that's looking to sell and needs to be able to tidy up all of its identity and be able to build a handful of other creative assets and presentation for that sale, or it is a brand that is legacy or like has a massive history and really dated visuals. So I bring some of the best folks together. So I'll have great copywriters, photographers, food stylists, videographers, bring together media and ad buyers. I've got amazing humans in my network. I often joke that GriffJack's greatest asset is our contact list. And so I bring folks together, whatever the project may be, with whatever skill set is really needed. We work on the thing, and then I make sure everyone gets paid and tell them I see them on the next one. And so it's been really great that way, honestly. Like, it has been awesome to see other colleagues develop relationships with past projects and see them like continue to hire the same photographer for the next like X number of projects, or work with the same videographer for X number of future things. That isn't needed for me, but it's killer for being able to develop creative. So the role that I end up playing is generally providing large strategy, which is a little tricky, because I will say, like, as of right now, I should say it's tricky currently, and that traditional strategy is not, it's not what's reigning supreme. Right now, I think a lot of marketing is very, the best marketing is a little bit reactive. And I know how that sounds, but what I mean by that is that it is being influenced by a team that has like their ears so finely tuned to a cultural moment. And it's brands that are able to intersect with what's happening within a particular culture, or particular experience or time, that are really doing some of the greatest marketing, as opposed to, let's develop this campaign and win all of these hearts by creating this thing that happens. It's like those that are responding really smartly to what's happening in culture currently. And I think that it requires a lot of trust, like the brand within the team. It requires a lot of trust, and it requires to be nimble. There's a certain degree of like risk comfort that is needed with a brand right now. But I think our traditional, probably like how we came up of like, there's a campaign brief first, and then there is budget, and then there is the team that has to be assembled, and then there's a series of approvals. And I've worked with a handful of brands where I watched that the complete just miss, like it just screamed right by them, where the creative for that cultural moment was literally just still sitting in an inbox waiting for approval, and they miss, and then they just look like a Me Too in not a positive way. And so it is, yeah, I would say it's a tricky thing to be in a strategic position right now where it's a matter of having to tell clients, like, you have to be in a place where you're okay with a little bit of risk, and you have to trust, like, that you're bringing in a team together that has really fine-tuned ears to be paying attention to figure out where you actually fit that means something, as opposed to having to tell everyone, I've arrived, so now you should be really excited I'm here.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we definitely see parallels there with just what you mentioned on the strategy side, and people, not wanting to pay or not valuing it as much, or how does that fit in? And I think trying to find that balance with, you need some level of planning and, strategic alignment and all of that. But then at the same time, you don't know what you don't know until you really get it out in the world. And so having that built into the plan. So we're going to take these risks, and we're going to see if it works or not, measure success and iterate from there is
Totally.
so
Not every
crucial.
cultural moment is for every single brand or every single voice, but rather it's, like I said, kind of in the beginning, where it's like, if you can feel very confident in knowing who you are as this brand, and you're very confident in your brand integrity, you know your story, you're not trying to be all things to all people. It's okay that you know who you are. And that then allows, I think, for a lot of freedom of when those cultural moments do present themselves, where you're like, I could really be in on this. But yeah, it does require a degree of, it does, trust and confidence. Trust into your team, confidence as a brand that you know who you are. So often, especially small and mid-sized brands, are so scattered. They're like a marble in a shoebox. They are just so desperate for everyone to like them and to be everywhere. And why am I not in Trader Joe's? And it is so sobering sometimes to have to sit down and really get honest with helping them articulate and feel really confident in who they are, as opposed to like, well, sure, like, everyone should love you. I'm relevant for everything and everywhere.
Right. Yeah, it's something for everybody in here. All right, I've got one last question before we wrap up. Before I ask, I do want to point people to connect with you. So I'll point people to our website, to griffjack.com.
Perfect.
And trueoriginfoods.com.
Perfect.
And is there anywhere else that you want people to know to connect with you, or anything you're working on?
That is a dream. I super appreciate that. Those are exactly the best ways to find me. Like my social space is generally more client focused. So most folks finding at Nicole Proof is going to give them like, well, she's alive. So I'm alive, but I tell a lot of coffee stories. No one drinks more coffee than I do. So you'll find a whole lot of coffee on there.
Challenge accepted on the coffee drink off.
I mean, I did go, there's a new one that opened up this morning down the street from me, and I was really excited to walk over. I live in the country, so I was like, there's a new coffee shop in the country. I was thrilled.
That is exciting. So the last question I was asked was just about, the kind of giving back that you mentioned earlier, right? People that you've worked with over the years and mentors and people who helped you. And so before we wrap up, I just want to ask if there's anybody who you want to give, a shout out to, from your career that kind of helped shape you.
That is so kind. Man, that list is long. How much time do you have? I would say in terms of
favorites, not picking favorites.
Okay. So in no particular order, right? No, I would say when I talked about working with coaches, there's two women that I've worked with. Judy Isaacson, who she is an executive coach who just is a gift of a human, and she really held me accountable, and she helped nurture me through virtually every transition I've had, like, since maybe 2012, something like that, 2010. And then I would say locally, in the Sacramento area, Trish Kelly, who is with Valley Vision. She has also been someone who took me under her wing, and especially during my farm to fork years. And she made every room I walked into easier. So much so that, like, when she would help me have a meeting with fill in the blank, any government organization, agency, team, and if she even wasn't with me, the ease of me being able to walk into this room and have them be like, oh, you're friends with Trish? And she would speak my name in very crowded rooms. She would put together amazing dinners with incredible women leaders from all over the country in all different kinds of sectors. And she would coach me on, here's who you need to talk to, and here's how these can connect. And if this person is doing this, this can also help this brand. She helped me think how to find those overlaps in ways that really provided meaning for everyone involved, not just because they were self-serving. And also, like I mentioned earlier, Mary Kimball with the Center for Land-Based Learning, she and I are good friends. In addition to, I got to serve on her board for many years, met her during my Chipotle years. And she is another who I don't think I would have the perspective I do about farming and agriculture without Mary. She absolutely has been an advocate. She's another who will say my name in crowded rooms and help me feel like I absolutely belong and give me all of the backstory to make me smarter when I walk in.
I love this. It's great. Great way to end it.
Thanks.
All right. We've been talking to Nicole Rogers, leader at GriffJack and True Origin Foods. Be sure to check her out at griffjack.com and trueoriginfoods.com. Nicole, thanks so much for being on the show.
You're a dream. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Missing Ingredient podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.